such. Uh, and apart from that, I um, request the other dignitaries on the dais are the guest of honor, Professor K. Pantnaik sir, Dean Faculty of Law, Osmania University, and the other guest of honor is Dr. G. Vinod Kumar sir, the Head Department of Law, Osmania University, and all the participants. A very good evening for all. Uh, I stand before you and as far as the University College of Law is concerned, it is a well-known college throughout India, and University College is imparting legal education for more than 115 years. We have a very eminent faculty with all doctorates and exposed nationally and internationally. This eminent college has produced a great number of eminent personalities like Honorable Judges, Justice Jagan Mohan Reddy sir, Justice Chandraya sir, Sudarshan Reddy sir, Subhashan Reddy sir, and many more. Some of the great politicians like the former Prime Minister P.V. Narasimha Rao sir and the former Chief Minister Kiran Kumar Reddy sir are also the alumni of this college. Apart from that, we have a good uh, number of eminent personalities, including Ramchandra Rao sir, the former Bar Council member, and he is also our alumni of the college. And this college has produced a good number of IPS, IAS, and junior civil judges, including Group 1, Group 2 service, Group 2 officers as such. Recently, last year, 16 students have been selected for junior civil judges, and 34 have been selected for Group 2 services throughout the state. Though our department is considered as a small department, we have n number of courses where we impart legal education as such. The courses are LLB 3YDC, LLB 5YDC, LLM with six specialized courses, three in the day and three in the evening. Uh, in the day, it includes the courses like corporate law, constitutional law, and employment and labor laws. As far as the evening is concerned, we have intellectual property rights, alternative dispute resolution, and ITL, that is international trade and economic laws, which is in the self-finance mode. For this academic year, the university is kind enough to permit to start two new LLM courses. One is criminology and criminal science, and the other one is human right laws. We also have the PhD course as such, and we produced as far as or more than 100 PhDs from this department. And we also have PG diploma courses in cyber laws, taxation and insurance laws, and insolvency laws. As far as law college is concerned, we have at present we have more than 1,100 students in different disciplines like LLB, 3 years, 5 years, LLM, PhD, including diploma courses. The University College of Law not only focuses on the legal education, but it also focuses on the overall development of the college as well as the students. As far as today's program is concerned, this is a 10-day workshop which is going to be conducted online, and research methodology is the backbone of every teacher, scholar, and the student. As per the guidelines of the UGC, Bar Council of India, and the higher education, this program is brought into execution. As everyone are working online, why not the research to be conducted online? This is the object for behind conducting this program. Earlier, we used to conduct research by sitting in the library hours together and collecting the material. That was the primary source of collecting the material for conducting the research. But as today we are moving along with the COVID, and it is important, and also it is the need of the hour that we have to go for online resources. We do not have the other alternative if we want to go for conducting the research as such. So that is one of the motto for conducting this online advanced legal research methodology course. And as far as the 10 days course is concerned, the course is conducted under the scheme of RUSA 2.0, that is Rashtriya Uchchatar Shiksha Abhiyan 2.0. For the University College of Law, a sum of 80 lakhs have been granted by RUSA 2.0. Under this scheme, we have two centers. Two centers have been allotted for us for the University College of Law. One is Usmania Center for Advanced Legal Research, and the other one is Center for Arbitration. For these two research centers, two coordinators have been appointed. One is Professor K. Pantnaik sir, that is the Dean Faculty of Law, and the other one is Dr. G. Vinod Kumar sir, the Head Department of Law. And apart from that, we have granted with two projects. One is on surrogacy laws in India, and the other one is amendments to land laws in Telangana state. The principal coordinators, the principal investigators are Professor G.B. Reddy sir is for land laws, and Radhika madam is for surrogacy. Apart from the these two projects, the other activities like workshop, invited lectures by the eminent personalities like from national and international from level, and practical trainings can also be conducted under this scheme, that is RUSA 2.0. And this is an opportunity to utilize the services, and in a way, the college teachers and students will benefit. As far as today's program is concerned, we identified 22 resource persons from different parts of India. The eminent speakers includes vice chancellors, registrars of the universities, former registrars, principals, former principals, administrators, and professors. These eminent personalities are going to impart legal knowledge right from jurisprudential aspects, followed by historical Nyaya Sutras to foundation of the research, where we also touch the topics like constitution, human rights, labor issues, corporate issues, and not only we are going to impart the knowledge through this research methodology in a particular discipline as such, but it is also we are also going to give information relating to multidisciplinary aspects, and at the same time, how to conduct research during this COVID period is also being discussed. Apart from the specific areas, the structure of the research, like we focus on the overview, how to conduct the research, qualitative and quantitative research, formation of hypothesis, data analysis, citation methods, online tools, report writing, etc., are being discussed in these 10 days. This workshop is going to give full knowledge in respect of legal research methodology. As far as the target group is concerned, there is a combination of professors, assistant professors, doctorates, PhD scholars, LLM students, principals, advocates, company secretaries, and tax consultants. A total number of 235 participants are going to be benefited from the 10-day national workshop, registered from different parts of the country. Students are from University College of Law, and students, teachers are also registered from different affiliated colleges under the university jurisdiction, and also students have been and teachers are also been registered from 39 state universities, which includes our sister universities like Palamur University, Telangana University, Kakatiya University, and also from the Andhra Pradesh, where the participants are from Padmavati Mahila University, Nagarjuna University, Andhra University, Damodaram Sanjeevaya National University, B.R. Ambedkar University, are being registered for this national workshop. And apart from that, five national law school students and teachers have been registered, including the participants from right from not only from one or two states, right from Kashmir to Kerala and from Gujarat to West Bengal. All the from all the states, the participants have been registered. And not only universities, even the students from Indian Law Institute and also from advocates who are on bars in the Telangana Bar or Bar Association, Delhi Bar Association, Supreme Court are also attending the workshop. As far as the students are concerned, not only the Indian students, even the foreign students are also participating in this program. By this brief introduction of the college and the workshop, I welcome you all for the 10-day national workshop, and I hope that all the participants are going to be benefited from this workshop. Thank you, one and all. Now, I request uh, our head, Dr. G. Vinod Kumar sir, Head Department of Law, Osmania University, to give a message on the 10-day national workshop. Sir, please.
Thank you, madam. Thank you very much
Thank you.
for the elaborating explanation about the program.
Thank you.
So I welcome all the dignitaries on the dais and off the dais. It is my immense pleasure to share my views here to small message. It is nothing but it is not a message. It is a only sharing of my views about the advancement of legal studies in after COVID. So COVID-19 has impacted the whole world, including all the departments, trade, business, everything. It is impacted every human life. So now we have changed our attitude towards the legal education because previously it is a traditional education. Traditionally we followed. Traditionally we wrote the exam. Traditionally we understood. But now the complete system has been changed because of the COVID-19. So then we have to adopt the new technological methods, especially computer and internet, Wi-Fi. Every technological aspect is very important, to do research now. Because even before COVID, also we used the Google for research, but now it is mandate. It has become a mandatory to use the tools, especially technological tools, because we are living in the modern society where the robotic technology is doing surgeries. So now without persons, the cars are going to run. Without people, even the weapon, the aircraft, everything personless institutions, personless, paperless institution has come. So that is the reason for in the judicial system, in the legal education system, it has become a mandatory to use the technological method, how to impress the teaching and learning methods, how to conduct the interviews, vivas, and how to make the tools, research methodological tools by using of the computer and technological system for understand better understanding of the students within these 10 days. Definitely I hope the legal luminaries who are there in the list, the even vice chancellors, registrars, they have huge experience in the teaching of law. So it is benefited for every student, every even advocates or different, faculty, different, even professionals are joining in this program. It is my immense pleasure to be. I am also giving one of the lecture on the 8th. It has allotted to me on human rights perspectives of legal research methods. So I thank to the madam who is hosting the program. Definitely, madam, it will going to great success
Thank you,
uh,
sir.
for the program. And also, I am also conducting from 17th onwards faculty development training program for 10 days. So, Chief Guest, Governor, Honorable Governor, Madam, Her Excellency, Dr. Tamil Sai, Madam has accepted. She will address the gathering. I hope definitely after this program, successful completion of this program, we will do that program also with combinedly. I thank you once again, Madam, for giving a golden opportunity to share my views after COVID, during the COVID situation. Thank you, one and all.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your valuable message given to the students and also the participants. You have discussed right from the traditional to the COVID and the importance of technology in all aspects of life, and also how to use the technology in our academic activities as such. Thank you very much, Vinod sir, for
Thank you,
your
madam. Thank you so much.
valuable message to all the participants. Thank you once again. Now I request Dr. N. Venkateshwarlu, Director, Estate Cell and in charge Director of Legal Estate, to speak a few words on this 10-day online workshop for a period of or 1 or 2
Good
minutes.
evening, madam. Good evening, and
Good evening, sir.
welcome to all the participants to attend this wonderful program. This is on 10 days online workshop on advanced legal research methodology. And in this program, one session also allotted to me on corporate research methodology. I will take care of all these things regarding corporate research and etc. This is a wonderful program. I wish you all the participants best of luck. And you see that this since it is advanced legal research methodology, all the participants must attend this program without a break and etc. Thank you for giving me opportunity.
I invite Professor G.B. Reddy sir to give a message regarding the 10-day national workshop. Sir, please.
Good afternoon to all of you. Professor K. Pantnaik, Dean Faculty of Law, Dr. Vinod Kumar, Head Department of Law, Dr. Vijay Lakshmi, Principal, Chairperson BOS, and the most eminent keynote speaker, Professor P. Ishwar Bhatt, Honorable Vice Chancellor, Karnataka State Law University, and former Vice Chancellor, West Bengal National University of Juridical Sciences, and my learned colleagues and all the participants, including the teacher colleagues. In fact, as we are already running late, I refrain from saying, many things. But I take this opportunity to greet all of you on this occasion and to welcome you to a 10-day discourse on, in fact, learning as well as unlearning many things on various aspects of the legal research methodology and the emerging trends. I take this opportunity to welcome Professor P. Ishwar Bhatt, sir. We are eagerly waiting to, listen to you, sir. Only the message of Professor Pantnaik is standing between us. So I thank the organizers for giving me this wonderful opportunity. I wish the program a great success. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. And now I request our Dean Faculty of Law, Professor K. Pantnaik, sir, and also the co-coordinator of the workshop to give his valuable message.
Good evening, all of you.
Good evening, sir.
Welcome all the speakers, participants, principals, dean, head, and my colleagues, non-teaching and other participants. This is first time we are conducting this research, legal research on research methodology This is first time in online.
Sir.
So I thanks for all those who are participating, and nearly 191 they are participating at present on my record. So welcome all of you, and the speakers and other because this first time this workshop on the advanced legal research methodology. It is for the benefit of the law teachers, law students, and practice advocates. So, and teachers. So, thank you for all this few. Good luck for participating for 10 days program. So, thank you, madam. So,
I request Dr. N. Ram Prasad, Assistant Controller of Examinations, to give the introduction of the keynote speaker, Ishwar Bhatt, sir. Ram Prasad, please.
Thank you, ma'am. Good evening to all. So, first of all, I would like to thank the organizing committee for giving me an opportunity to present the brief profile of today. A great law professor, Professor P. Ishwar Bhatt, the Honorable Vice Chancellor of Karnataka State Law University. Professor Bhatt was born in year 1950 at Poddur village, Puttur Taluk, the district in the DK district of Karnataka, in an agriculture family. He had earlier education in Poddur, and Poddur studied in Vivekananda College, Puttur, and Udupi Law College. And he had his LLM degree from University of Mysore with a gold medal. He had obtained a MA degree in history, and he got a PhD degree in law from the University of Mysore. So, on the thesis, Interrelationship Among Fundamental Rights in 1994, and LLD from National Law School of India, University, Bangalore in 2016. For the thesis on non-profit voluntary organizations law. So, he has a 40 years of teaching experience in law, and taught in Krishna Law College, Hassan, 1972, from 1972 to 1982. And in the PG Department of Law, Karnataka University, Dharwad, and a Department of Studies in Law from University of Mysore, 1984 to 2011, and in as a Vice Chancellor in the West Bengal National University of Juridical Sciences, Calcutta, from 2011 to 2018, and he served as a Professor and Dean Faculty of Law, University of Mysore, and acting Vice Chancellor of University of Mysore for 4 months, and also Vice Chancellor of the West Bengal National Law University of Juridical Sciences, Calcutta, from 2011 to 2018. He has handled 5 research projects and guided 20 candidates for PhD successfully. He has specialized in and taught in constitutional law, administrative law, and social transformation, and non-profit law, and legal research methodology, intellectual property rights, and water law. He is a member of several universities in India as an academic council and syndicate council. And he was a Fulbright Nehru Visiting Fellow, and involved in co-teaching in NPO law in Columbus Law University, Columbus Law School, Catholic University of America in 2010. And a Shastri visiting lecturer in 2009 at Queen's University, Kingston, Canada, to teach comparative legal tradition, and Salzburg Fellow in 1997 for undergoing seminar course on American civilization, and Shastri Research Faculty Awardee in 1992 for researching at New York, Toronto, and Ottawa universities on language rights. He has presented papers in international conference on third sector law at Toronto, Seoul, Jakarta, Beijing, and Bangkok. He also presented a paper on mother tongue education at Kathmandu, on Indian constitutional development at Islamabad. He has and presented papers in more than 100 national seminars. And he has authored books on non-profit voluntary organization law, law and social transformation, fundamental rights and administrative liability, and published 115 research articles in national and international journals and books. His books entitled Idea and Methods of Legal Research, which is very wonderful book. What is the word book? And Harmful Superstitions and Legal Responses are under Auditor. He has edited books under the titles Essays in Law, Constitutionalism and Constitutional Pluralism, International and Interstate Water Disputes and Law, and Natural Resources Law, and even a book in Kannada language that is Kunatvagalu Mattu Siddhantakalu. Sir, we are very happy to have you such a wonderful keynote speaker. Really, the participant is definitely going to enrich with your experience, because 40 years of teaching experience, I think you are what to be part of this 10-day research methodology program. Thank you, sir, and thank you, the organizing committee, to introduce such a wonderful keynote speaker for today's program. Thank you, madam. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ram Prasad sir. You have elaborately introduced the keynote speaker, our Honorable Vice Chancellor sir. Now I request Honorable Vice Chancellor sir of Karnataka State Law University, Professor P. Ishwar Bhatt sir, to sir, please, though it is a little bit late, but I request you on behalf of the University College of Law and the staff students to please give a valuable keynote address, sir.
Panta Naik, Professor G.B. Reddy, Professor Vijayalakshmi Bollampalli, all the respected members of faculty of Osmania University, all the participants. This is a 10-day program on faculty development program on research methodology. I'm happy to participate in this program as a resource person. My keynote speech will be about idea and methods of legal research in general, and particularly I'll be focusing on multi-method legal research. First of all, let me congratulate all of you.
Thank you, sir.
For taking a keen interest in legal research. Research is a serious intellectual exercise. It is an academic work with the purpose of expanding the horizons of knowledge. Knowledge is always with a purpose, and the purpose of legal research shall be ultimately to promote welfare of the people. Although its immediate objective might be exploration, explanation, or say evaluation, or narration, description, etc. It ought to promote the cause of reform, because law is meant for promoting the cause of justice. That is why legal education and legal research have this responsibility of promoting the cause of social reform. By research, we mean an activity of searching again and again, searching for facts, truth, and relating that truth to various issues which are around us, so that some solution to any specific problem can be identified. It has been defined as a systematic, exhaustive, and a thorough search or investigation by using specialized tools, so that one will be able to arrive at appropriate conclusion relating to that research problem. This research problem is to be identified, and relating to that, all the data, data relating to facts, data relating to law, data relating to the society at large. These are to be gathered, and there ought to be promotion of the cause of truth as well as the justice, because these two things go hand in hand. It is essential that through research, ultimately, the cause of justice shall be promoted. That is why even a very learned scholars like Felix Frankfurter, who was also judge of U.S. Supreme Court, considered that a researcher should have the heart of a poet and a mind of a scientist, and he should have that vision of a prophet. He meant that one should respond to the social realities or human problems, because ultimately it is the human problem that is to be resolved. Then it is through scientific method that the whole process of research is to be conducted. Then he should have that vision, or he should act as a philosopher to promote the cardinal value which the civilization tries to uphold. Values in a legal system or civilization values are to be duly taken into consideration, and when they are concretized in the form of constitutional principles, it is essential that the constitutional values shall provide proper perspective with which one should go ahead with the research. When we think about research, we have to understand the nature of research, purpose of research, and various general ideas about research, or ideas which propel us to conduct research, and ideas which actually inspire or which form the basic ideology through which research becomes fruitful. These are aspects of ideas. Then there are methods. Method is basically a systematic procedure, way of doing things. That method may be several methods. It may not be one single method. In the field of law, there is a doctrinal legal research. There is also non-doctrinal legal research. Within doctrinal legal research, there are specific methods like analytical legal research, historical legal research, comparative legal research, then philosophical. This is how doctrinal legal research is also not one single method. It is a combination of several methods. There are several non-doctrinal methods. Of course, let me point out what is meant by doctrinal method. See, when a doctrine is central, or when a legal principle is the core thing around which a whole research activity is to be conducted, then we say that it's a doctrinal legal research. See, so many decisions, Supreme Court decisions or High Court decisions or so many other decisions of other jurisdictions, they're revolving around certain doctrines. Further, in a law also, in the course of explanation, in the course of discourse, we come across a number of doctrines. Doctrine of frustration, doctrine of consideration, so many doctrines. Within the Constitution also, number of doctrines are there. See, yes, one of the most popular doctrine is a doctrine of a basic structure. So several doctrines are there. See, through case law analysis or through discussion of continental literature, in the form of primary literature like the constitutional document, international conventions or legislations, and also judgments. Then secondary is like articles, books, journals, and various other writings which make analysis of the primary materials. All this constitute the resources for undertaking doctrinal legal research. It's mainly library-based research, but because of use of a computer, internet, or because of access to various types of information available, then it is not just confined to library, and will be going beyond library, even for doctrinal legal research. Then non-doctrinal legal research is one where empirical research is the core approach. There, through field work, one will be collecting data. There are two prominent methods are qualitative method and quantitative method. By qualitative method, we mean using a sociological method of understanding the society by observation, by interview, or by questionnaire, or by various tools, so that what is the feature of the society in its natural setting, or what is something intimate to the society, or what is the society's basic aspirations, that will be called out through that kind of research that is called as qualitative legal research. Then quantitative research is one where one will be using numbers, how many. By asking such questions, one will be going ahead and by using the numbers or statistical data or quantitative data, one will be conducting a research. In this way, quantitative research is going to be conducted. There also, we come across specific stages through which that quantitative research is to be conducted. POPI. There is first of all a collection of data, collection of all statistical information, then organizing them, then systematically classifying them. That is a method of organization. Then presenting them in a proper form, maybe in a tabular form, or through graphs, or through various other representations. This is a presentation. After that, one will be making analysis of all this statistical data. Then one will be interpreting. In the course of interpretation, the statistical tools, formula, or various other available assistances will have to be used by the researcher. This is how quantitative research is going to be conducted. We find that judiciary conducts quantitative research. Academicians conduct quantitative research. Of course, the question of who conducts the research, that is to be answered in this way, that it is conducted by all persons who are seriously interested in knowing appropriate answer for any of the legal problem. It might be a law student, legal academician, a researcher, or a lawyer, or a judge, or a person in a business firm, etc., law firm, etc. But there is a much difference between research conducted by academician and research conducted by lawyer. Because a lawyer will be just thinking about upholding a particular argument or a proposition, whereas a researcher will be looking at all the viewpoints and arriving at some appropriate conclusion on the basis of analysis without any kind of a bias. See, lawyering involves right or wrong, my proposition is correct. That's what a lawyer says. But an academician is not going to do like that. Or even judge is also not going to act on the basis of some predetermined proposition or argument. See, these are two broad methods, doctrinal method and non-doctrinal method, can be combined, or they ought to be combined, because it is not possible to conduct a research in an isolated manner, taking one particular method alone. Suppose a particular person conducts a research, it is quite possible that he may rely on some erroneous data, or the information might be inadequate, or the analysis might be flawsome, or his conclusion might be defective. That is why it is essential that there should be combination of several methods. See, that approach is called as a multi-method legal research. When more than one method is employed, then we say that it is a multi-method legal research. Multi-method legal research is employed for the purpose of policy research. Now, suppose about evolution of policy, or evaluation of policy, or about estimation of its success or failure, some research is to be conducted. It is essential that a multi-method research is to be used. There is both a doctrinal and non-doctrinal. There are also several methods within the broad method will have to be used. Then there is action research. What is action research? See, when through research, ultimately, if action is going to be promoted, or it is going to be conducted, then we say that it is action research. The researcher, instead of just finding out the facts and just reporting to the university or to the concerned body, he will be making use of that material for ensuring that the aggrieved person is given justice, or the problem at hand is resolved in some way. This is the action research. Usually in the sphere of human rights research, we come across this action research. See, when about trafficking in women or trafficking in children, research is conducted. Then, so the researcher is not just satisfied with that. Suppose with the help of some NGO, he tries to provide some protection to those victims of trafficking, or he tries for some rehabilitation. Then we say that it is action research. Human Rights Commission, or Child Rights Commission, or National Women's Commission, about Section 301 of Criminal Procedure Code. Although law is there which says that within 60 days the rape trial shall be complete. The social reality is not like that. See, by just looking to that legislative provision, one may say that yes, wonderful thing has been done, and now within 60 days the rape trial will be complete. But the reality is that in most of the cases, the time taken is more. And when we conduct quantitative research or qualitative research or empirical research, we will be able to understand in how many number of cases compliance to Section 301 is done, or it is not done. About that, we come across such facts only on the basis of non-doctrinal research. And it is said that out of 15 sample cases, in all the 15 cases, the minimum time taken is 67 days, no, 77 days in one particular case, and in all other 14 cases, it was something more, and the average was 240 days. So when a social reality is something different, that social reality will have to be taken into account in assessing the efficacy of law. Thus, doctrinal legal research alone will not be leading us to truth or nearer truth. it is essential that social realities, empirical things, and the factual data will have to be taken into consideration. That is why it has become inevitable that there ought to be use of a non-doctrinal method as well. See, now onwards, let me focus on this non-doctrinal, this multi-method legal research. Before that, let me point out that idea of research is knowing what research is, and through research what is to be done, and what perspectives are to be developed, and how a researcher should be free from various types of influences or tendencies like plagiarism and other things, and how in a disciplined manner he shall put forward his work in a very sincere manner. This is the idea of a research. Then there are so many ideas that might be influencing. Of course, it is possible to say that idea of a feminism, idea of a constitutionalism, transformative constitutionalism, or the idea of a welfare. These ideas might be influencing in the course of research. But there are methods between idea and methods. Always that relation of getting support from an idea to make a method strong, or to use method so that idea will become clear. All these things are to be done. That is why idea and method of research are to be integrated in a proper manner. About the methods, see, method is basically way of doing things. It is a procedure. It is a systematic process through which research is to be conducted. Which method is better? When several methods are available before us, or when our a la carte, or when our choosing box is quite wide, so that a number of methods are there. Among those methods, which method is to be used? Or if combination of more than one method is to be done, how exactly that combination is to be made? When one enters into this kind of a discourse, it is called as a methodology. There is a science of methods. Which method is appropriate, effective, advantageous, disadvantageous, and how in a particular situation, particular method is quite appropriate. About all those things, one should involve in such a discussion. That is called as a methodology. So, which method for which research? That question is to be answered by the researcher first. See, here, it is not one single method that could satisfy the researcher, because by employing one research method alone, the researcher might be incurring certain disadvantages, that he might not be knowing some of the facts which other methods may be supplying or providing. That's looking from different dimensions becomes very, very much important. That's when more than one method is used, then we say that multi-method research. It might be a combination of doctrinal plus non-doctrinal method, or within the doctrinal method itself, analytical, historical, comparative, philosophical methods of research are there. Combining any of those methods or all the methods, that may also be quite appropriate, even for a purely doctrinal legal research. Or when a person combines doctrinal and non-doctrinal, partly doctrinal and partly non-doctrinal, then under the non-doctrinal method we have qualitative method and quantitative method. There also qualitative method supplements a quantitative method, quantitative method supplements a qualitative method. The combination of several methods because very much essential. See, this is called as a situation of triangulation, or sociologically, it is considered as a process where the social reality in its multiple dimensions are taken into consideration. Because social reality is not one single thing. It has several dimensions. All those dimensions will have to be taken into consideration. The use of the term triangle becomes quite significant here. See, triangulation. This is a term that is used in the field of a survey of land. As a lawyer, so you might be knowing that whenever there is a land dispute or a border dispute, the parties go to the surveyor, and a court also takes the assistance of a surveyor, and ultimately on the basis of a map and other things, the matter is going to be resolved. Of course, a possession and some other dimensions might be there, but the data that is gathered through survey becomes very much important. Let me show one particular diagram. Of course, so this is the diagram. Whether you are able to see the diagram? This is the diagram. This is the diagram. Of course, I'm not in a position to use this triangulation map because there is some confusion about that, because it is put in a reverse form or inverse form. Okay, between X and Y, suppose there is a dispute, and the line of a dispute is about AB. AB is the line of a dispute, and B1 is another point that is alternatively argued as the possible point. Then the neighboring landmarks, neighboring survey stones will be identified by the surveyor, and the distance between the point of a dispute with the other points will be taken into account. So many triangles will be drawn, and on the basis of all such triangles, ultimately the surveyor will be arriving at a conclusion whether point B is correct or point B1 is the correct one. So by using the evidence that is available through other landmarks or other survey stones, it is possible to identify the exact point of that particular line of a dispute. That line can be identified or that dispute can be resolved by locating the exact point. So location of exact point in any land survey can be done only by getting input from the neighboring survey stones or neighboring map and various others. What I intend to point out is that if any dispute arises, that dispute can be resolved by taking into consideration various aspects of social life, the social, economic, political, and various other aspects are to be taken into consideration. And these other aspects can be understood properly only if the researcher goes for use of other methods of research. Relying purely on doctrinal method, it is not possible to attain the appropriate answer. He has to take into consideration social, economic, political, cultural, and other factors. for example, there is the issue of farmers' suicide. See, only from the angle of a law, it is not possible to find answer to the problem of farmers' suicide. Whether the agricultural marketing law has failed, or whether a debt relief law has failed, or some other legislation has failed, these will provide only partial answer. There may be other factors, economic factors, then mental factors, psychological factors, then cultural factors, or so many other factors which put the farmer into a lot of tension, pressure, or frustration, etc. So, by resorting to multiple method of legal research alone, that it is possible to find an answer. That is why multiple method of research is very much essential. To elaborate at this point, let me give various reasons in support of that. Why there ought to be multiple method of legal research. In my book on idea and methods of legal research, there is one chapter on a multi-method legal research. Of course, multi-method legal research is a necessity. It is not a luxury, because when a legal research is relating to a legal problem in the context of a social circumstance, by looking to the social circumstance as a whole, that one has to conduct research. That is why one should go for a multiple method of legal research, or MMLR. I will use the word MMLR for the sake of brevity. Why MMLR is essential? See, firstly, the very idea of a law itself is something that connects with the economic, social, cultural, and other factors. Because law is not discipline alone; it is a discipliner of others, or it molds the behavior of others. That's why all factors relating to the human behavior are to be taken into consideration, and mere legal materials will not be sufficient for that purpose. Secondly, for conducting any law reform research, one has to know the problem from several dimensions. See, economic, social, cultural, and various other factors are to be taken into consideration. About the very definition of law itself, explanations are given in books on jurisprudence will point out how authority is the basis, or economic infrastructure is the basis, or social acceptance is the basis, or anthropological support is the basis, or so many factors are constituting the basis for law. That is why, in order to know the inadequacies of law, one has to take into consideration so many factors. That is why multiple method of legal research become essential. See, when a law reform is something to be done, various commissions or various agencies which conduct research for recommending a law reform, maybe law commission, or administrative reform commission, or a review commission, or a backward class commission. So many commissions are there. When these commissions conduct research, they conduct it in such a way that they go beyond law, or they not just confined to mere lawyer's law analysis, or just a narration of what the law is. It is essential that when a backward class commission conducts research, the social factors like level of literacy, extent of poverty, then distance to drinking water point, or access to health, or child mortality. All these factors are taken into account in determining whether particular community is backward or not. See, here we come across a combination of subjective and objective factors. Subjective factor like a caste, and objective factors like so many economic, social, and other parameters. These factors are to be taken into consideration. Then another reason why MMLR is to be used is that doctrinal legal research is a kind of ivory tower approach, whereas a down-to-earth approach can be conducted in a non-doctrinal research is to be resorted to. See, there also the researcher will have to combine various methods within doctrinal. Now, suppose a person conducts a doctrinal legal research, he is not going for non-doctrinal. Of course, that is not it is not at all advisable nowadays. But suppose he chooses a doctrinal method of legal research, then combining various sub-methods like analytical, comparative, philosophical, that becomes very much essential. Otherwise, he cannot get the total picture. Mere legal analysis without looking to history will provide a very inadequate information. Why that a law emerged? What was the historical experience? Then philosophically, what is the justification? What is the basis? Then comparatively, whether this particular proposition is something experimented in other systems, what were their experience and how it is to be conducted. About that, it is possible to know only by going for such a comparative study. That's whether it is a mere doctrinal method or whether it's a mere non-doctrinal method. There also one has to go for a combination. For example, between a quantitative and qualitative research, there also combination becomes essential. Mark Galanter, in his famous article on the repeat players versus one-shotters, he points out that it is the economic, social, and other factors that shall be taken into consideration. See, this article about this. When litigation takes place between repeat players and other litigant, repeat players are in an advantageous position. Repeat players means litigants who come to court of law oftentimes. It might be company, or it might be rich person, or it might be an association. They frequently come to court of law because of their economic position, expertise, or so many other things. They are in an advantageous position. Whereas a person who has lost some valuable thing in his life, or when he has been deprived of a particular right and he goes to court of law for the first time, he is a one-shotter. He is always in a disadvantageous position. He has to pay to his lawyer heavily, or he may not be knowing the intricacies of law, courthouse ways, and so many other things. See, the conclusion that he arrives at is based on combination of qualitative research and quantitative research. He makes use of a lot of statistical data. Further, he makes use of various qualitative method of conducting research. See, conducting a qualitative research and quantitative research presuppose use of a number of sociological tools. empirical data tools like a say questionnaire, observation. In that observation, again, there are several methods: participant observation, non-participant observation, etc. Then yes, then focus the group discussion, case study, then of course a survey and various other specific tools are there. See, there also such tools can be used in a combined manner. Now, use of one tool alone will not be providing full information. The information that is provided by one tool, for example, a questionnaire, can be cross-checked by the information that is available through interview. Further, these again can be cross-checked by the information that is got through case study. On this need for multiple method of legal research. I am pointing out that what cannot be done by one method alone can be done by multiple method because mono method becomes a defective because of reliance on particular type of information, whereas a multiple method allows an opportunity of cross-checking all such data because there will be multiple data, there will be several data, and one can be cross-checked with another data. Of course, the veracity of that data can be determined on the basis of ultimately the probative value of such a evidence. Then so many disciplines will have to be used in a particular research activity. Of course, interdisciplinary study has become essential. For example, one conducts a research about say criminal trial. See, criminology, sociology, and various other related sciences will have to be used. Similarly, when a person conducts a research on say groundwater law, about a geology, about agriculture, about economy, economics, or about the traditional method of farming, etc. One has to gather data. Otherwise, the research on a groundwater law will not be complete, or it will not be effective. Without understanding the hydrogeological principle, it is not possible to conduct a research in the field of groundwater law. See here, use of other discipline or a interdisciplinary method of conducting research compels the researcher to go for a MMLR. Now, by single method alone, suppose a researcher conducts a research on a groundwater law, it will be just a case law analysis or a mere narration of a particular legal provision, and it will not be providing full information about all the aspects. That's why when a interdisciplinary study of law occurs, or when that is necessitated, then the uh, multiple method of legal research becomes essential. Another reason for MMLR is this: inductive and deductive methods of reasoning will be employed by the researcher. There also, the researcher will be relying upon various uh, factors. Uh, there, it's essential that MMLR alone will be providing appropriate solution, because inductive method of reasoning will have to be cross-checked by deductive method, and it is essential that he should go for MMLR. Then what is the procedure of conducting this MMLR? About this, let me briefly explain. See, first the researcher should find the suitability of MMLR. Why and how relating to this particular research MMLR is suitable. Then which method? For this research, whether a combination of methods ABC may be correct, or whether a combination of methods B, C, D, E can be regarded as appropriate, or whether one has to go for a D, E, F, G as the method. About that, he has to decide. See, in the course of his preliminary stage of research, he should know which methods can be combined, and relating to method, suppose he has an appropriate insight, then it becomes smooth. That's why he has to think which method is suitable to this particular research problem. Secondly, the researcher should establish a proper relationship between the combination of method and the hypothesis that he has formulated. Once he formulates a hypothesis, then at that stage, how that hypothesis is to be proved. Is it through quantitative method, or is it through qualitative, or through other methods like doctrinal methods? About that, he should relate. Now, whether from the angle of a particular hypothesis, combination of particular methods can be regarded as appropriate or not. About that, he should get adequate clarification, and he should concretize his thoughts at that level itself. Then, of course, not only combining the methods, then combining various sub-methods, that also becomes quite important. Here, a combination between methods and a combination within method. There are two types of things. Combination between methods means a combination of a doctrinal and non-doctrinal method. There is a larger method. Then a combination within. There is a within the empirical method. So several tools of data can be combined. For example, a questionnaire, interview, or a survey, or a case study, etc. How he combines those two tools. Or in the field of doctrinal legal research, combination of analytical, historical, comparative, and philosophical. That becomes very much essential. So, between method combination and within method combination. About the method of combination itself, he should have that kind of clarity. Then everything becomes quite smooth. Then he should proceed with the uh, particular approach. I mean, whether these multiple methods are to be used simultaneously or sequentially, one after the other. And if it is one after the other, which method first and which method next. About this also, he should be clear. It is possible to conduct several methods simultaneously. For example, one conducts a say combination. One goes for a combination of a doctrinal and non-doctrinal, historical, philosophical, and other things that he does. Along with that, he conducts a empirical study. See, certain amount of idea on the basis of a doctrinal legal research is essential for conducting a non-doctrinal legal research. But he need not wait for a completion of a doctrinal research. He can simultaneously conduct a non-doctrinal research. See, this is about the procedure. Yes, another step is that when several data are collected by the researcher, and when there is a discrepancy between the data collected in one method and the data collected in another method, then he has to carefully examine which has a greater weightage, which has a greater probative value. Of course, probability of I mean, preponderance of probabilities. That approach may be helpful in deciding which is appropriate, or one can say cross-examine, or one can put certain limitations about one's own finding, saying that yes, according to another data, this is the reality, etc. See, when these types of combinations are done uh, by keeping in mind the circumstance of a particular research problem. Of course, the solution becomes a circumstance specific, and it is not possible to have, say, some straight jacket formula for all types of MMLR. There's for a particular research, what type of MMLR is to be done, that researcher himself has to decide. Taking into consideration various factors, he may have to make a choice between a doctrinal, non-doctrinal, or various combinations. Now, what is the potentiality of this MMLR? See, already I told you that for policy research, action research, and feminist legal research, it is quite helpful. Then for socio-legal studies, this MMLR becomes very much essential. For example, about equal employment opportunity, a research is to be conducted. See, combination of doctrinal and non-doctrinal becomes essential. Then when the problems relating to children are to be studied. Yes, doctrinal research, no doubt, is to be done. But how at the spot children are treated? There is a children's home, or in a juvenile justice centers and various other rehabilitation centers, or other places, how they are treated. About this, one has to go to those places, one has to visit, one has to collect data through observation, questionnaire, interview, and various other methods. That's partly doctrinal and partly non-doctrinal. That becomes very much essential in such a situation. That's for all types of socio-legal research, MMLR becomes essential. See, the very use of the word socio-legal, that itself suggests that mere legal research or lawyer's law analysis will not help. One has to go for a sociological research as well. Then, various researches relating to law and development studies, MMLR becomes very, very helpful. For example, when through land reforms, uh, big revolutionary development took place. A sociological researcher uh, conducted a legal research. He was basically a sociologist, but about the impact of law on the society, he conducted research. For 2 or 3 years, he conducted an empirical study. How many uh, tenants uh, got occupancy right from the land tribunal, and what were the difficulties, uh, what were the consequence, what is the social impact, what is the economic impact, and how the society underwent a change. About all those things, he conducted research. See, is it possible to conduct research only by using the doctrinal tool, like say, a case law analysis, then analysis of legislation and such a thing? It is inevitable that for any development study, one has to go for a MMLR. Now, suppose a displaced person, problem of a displaced persons, project related displaced persons, about them. So the research is to be conducted. Then one has to go to the field, and one has to conduct research accordingly. Similarly, when under a land border agreement, so many enclaves were merged into the respective territories. There's a Indian enclaves in Bangladesh being merged with the Bangladesh. Then Bangladesh enclaves within Indian territory being merged with the India. That was the famous land border agreement that took place in 2011, and that was quite successfully implemented. See, during the last 7 or 8 years, that was a big issue in West Bengal, and people who conducted doctrinal legal research could not get a proper answer to various issues. It is only by going to the field, by conducting a research, by using tools like observation, interview, case study, and such are tools like a survey, etc., that ultimately a successful research could be done. This shows how, for a developmental research, MMLR becomes very much essential. Similarly, for a biographical study, it becomes very much essential. See, from the childhood days to the final days as a Supreme Court judge, suppose a person's whole biography is to be narrated. Then the researcher has to gather data from various sources. See, by sitting in a library alone, he is not possible to. It's not possible for him to conduct research. See, biographical research about Koka Subbarao, or about Justice V.R. Krishna Iyer, or Justice P.N. Bhagwati. All these biographies are based on MMLR, because by visiting their visiting the family members, or friends, or classmates, or the fellow advocates, or fellow judges, etc. It is possible to get a full-fledged information, and this should be cross-checked with the various judgments rendered, or various letters written, or various communications or publications that he had made, etc. Thus, in a biographical research, it becomes essential. Then in behavioral studies, it becomes essential. For example, behavior of legislators, behavior of judges, or behavior of workers, or behavior of men and women
in a domestic circumstance in relation to domestic violence, in a behavior of children, either in schools or say in uh, various other contexts are to be conducted. One has to go for MMLR only. Even our legislators, suppose from one political party to another political party, they jump. Yes, MMLR is one method through which one can know the nuances of this anti-defection law or factors which obstruct the application of this law. See, thus MMLR is quite useful for various types of research, and it is a necessity rather than luxury in a legal research. But it is to be conducted in a very methodic manner, in a scientific manner, whether it's done in a phased manner or whether it's done in a say simultaneous application of different methods. It should be done in a very planned manner. Whole of my thrust was about planned application of this multiple method of legal research. When a law is a social reason and it's a product of a society, we cannot conduct research by just sticking to one tool of legal research like a case law method, doctrinal method, etc. One has to go for a combination of several methods. This is something that ought to be kept in mind by legal researchers. I hope that 10 days of your learning in this particular faculty development program will be building that required capacity to conduct research in a most effective manner. Let me wish all of you very good career as researchers. With this, let me conclude. Thank you very much for the opportunity given. Osmania University has been doing a lot of good things. In the past, I had an opportunity, I had several opportunities of participating in Osmania University programs, and this is an opportunity where I am able to share my views with this. Let me thank Professor Vijayalakshmi, Professor G.B. Reddy, and others. I am ready to answer any of the questions if time is permissible. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
This is the keynote session by the eminent speaker. We did not allow the students to question, sir.
Okay.
They may not have any questions from the participant side, sir.
Okay.
So now, as you are the ocean of the research methodology, sir. The subject has been simplified in such a manner that every person who is not interested in opting for research also, now they feel that they have to do some kind of research in any particular area. So starting from an idea, the methods of research, and you also related the research with facts, law, and society, which is going to result in achieving the justice. And also you beautifully explained the qualities of a researcher, sir. Like he must have the heart of a poet, the mind of the scientist, followed by the vision to achieve. And also the focus has been to be made by a researcher relating the social, economical, and political aspects. And also you discussed about the multi-dimensional research, that is MMLR, where yes, by one the mono method may have certain disadvantages. So the advantages and disadvantages of the methods which we are using are been put in a nutshell, and you have given in such a form that every participant is, I feel on behalf of the participants, I feel that everyone is going to show certain interest towards this subject, sir. And in this nutshell, you have explained one idea by adopting many methods fixed to certain hypotheses, tested and examined with different tools with a combination of different methods by collecting the data, following the MMLR method for a good product. And I thank on behalf of the University College of Law and the participants and my all colleagues and the students, sir. Thank you very much, sir, for your elaborate and simplified keynote speech as such. Thank you from all the faculty. Once again, I thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now I request Dr. Radhika Yadav, the Vice Principal, University College of Law, Osmania University, to give vote of thanks.
I thank you, ma'am, for giving me this opportunity of extending vote of thanks to all the dignitaries who made this session a success. On behalf of the University College of Law, I take this opportunity to extend vote of thanks to all the dignitaries who made this session a success. First of all, I would like to thank Gopal Reddy sir, though he's not present, maybe because of his, helm of the affairs which he's taking care of. He couldn't make it for the program. But still, of course, in spite of his absence, his encouragement has always been there, which has made us to present such kind of a programs, and of course, where we have a series of programs which are lined up with the support and with the encouragement of our registrar sir, Gopal Reddy sir, and of course, I would now like to thank the Professor Ishwar Bhatt sir, Vice Chancellor, Karnataka State Law University. First of all, for readily accepting the request to deliver the keynote address, and sir, the inputs and the way, with so much of patience you have presented and delivered the different kinds of research and how to approach and how to go ahead with the way we have to go ahead with the research for different kinds of subjects. It's the way you have presented it. It is really shows the experience and the knowledge you have in this particular area. So thank you so much for giving us so many valuable inputs for every one of us, which will help all of us in our future research endeavors. Now I'd like to thank Professor K. Pantnaik sir, Dean Faculty of Law, Professor G. Vinod Kumar sir, Head Department of Law, Professor G.B. Reddy sir, all of them encouraging us in launching this program successfully. Of course, without their support, this wouldn't have been a reality. That's a fact. And of course, I would like to thank Professor Venkateshwarlu sir, Professor Ram Prasad for their support, and of course, not the least, in the last, of course, to Dr. Irfan, to Nishit, and to Srinivas. Without their constant support at the back, which they are giving technically, this wouldn't have been a reality. Thank you one and all the participants who have taken their initiative in registering themselves and registering themselves and participating in the program and making it a huge success. The number shows though this program was instrumentalized in a very short period, but still the number of the people who have registered shows the interest which they have shown to our workshop. And I'm sure and I ensure we all as a team, the college who are behind this workshop, will ensure you that you will definitely will have a very enriching experience in the coming 10 days. Thank you one and all. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.